What if I told you about a ship found sailing the high seas? Its captain's dinner still on the table, yet every single person aboard had vanished without a trace. No pirates, no storm damage, just an empty vessel drifting aimlessly. Could you solve the enduring mystery of the Mary Celeste and its lost crew? Welcome back to the channel, mystery lovers. Today, we're re-diving into one of maritime history's most bone-chilling enigmas, a ghost ship that has haunted investigators, historians, and storytellers for over 150 years. This isn't just another tale of the sea. This is a puzzle that defies logic, challenges our understanding of human nature, and leaves us questioning what truly happened on that fateful December day in 1872. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and prepare to journey into the unknown. But fair warning, by the end of this video, you might find yourself staring at the ocean with a completely different perspective. December 4th, 1872. The merchant vessel De Grazia is cutting through the choppy waters of the Atlantic, somewhere between Portugal and the Azores. Captain David Morehouse is at the helm when something catches his eye on the horizon. A ship sailing erratically, its movements strange and unpredictable against the winter swells. As they draw closer, an unsettling silence grips the crew. This isn't just any vessel. It's the Mary Celeste, a ship Morehouse recognizes. He knows her captain, Benjamin Briggs, personally. They'd shared drinks in New York just weeks earlier before both ships departed on their respective journeys. But something is terribly wrong. The Mary Celeste is sailing under partial sail, zigzagging through the water like a drunk man stumbling home. There's no one at the wheel, no crew on deck, no response to their calls across the water. Morehouse orders his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, to take a small boarding party to investigate. Imagine being in DeVoe's boots as he climbs aboard that ghost ship. The silence is deafening. Not even the creak of rigging or footsteps on deck. Just the sound of wind and water, and an overwhelming sense that something fundamental is missing. What they found aboard the Mary Celeste still sends chills down the spines of maritime historians today. The ship was in remarkable condition. No signs of struggle, no blood, no damage from storms or battles. Captain Briggs' cabin was neat and tidy, with his personal belongings carefully arranged. In the galley, they found the captain's breakfast still laid out: bread, butter, and tea, as if he'd simply stepped away for a moment and planned to return. The cargo hold contained 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, virtually untouched. This wasn't some cheap liquor. This was industrial alcohol worth a fortune in 1872. Yet, not a single barrel had been breached by pirates or thieves. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. The ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigation instruments and the ship's only lifeboat. It was as if the entire crew, all 10 souls aboard, had simply decided to abandon a perfectly seaworthy vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The question that haunted DeVoe continues to haunt us today, echoed across that empty deck. Where did everyone go? To understand this mystery, we need to go back to the beginning, to November 7th, 1872, when the Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor with high hopes and a routine cargo run ahead. Captain Benjamin Briggs was no greenhorn sailor, gambling with fate on the high seas. At 37 years old, he was an experienced mariner from a seafaring family, known for his competence, sobriety, and moral character. This was some reckless adventure. Briggs was a family man who brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, aboard for what was expected to be a straightforward voyage to Genoa, Italy. Think about that for a moment. Would you bring your wife and toddler on a dangerous expedition? Of course not. This was meant to be as routine as a cross-country road trip. Briggs had assembled a crew of 7 experienced sailors. These weren't desperate men or criminals. They were professional seamen with solid reputations. The first mate, Albert Richardson, was a trusted friend of Briggs, who'd sailed with him before. The crew roster included German sailors and Americans, all vetted and reliable. The Mary Celeste herself was a sturdy brigantine, 282 tons, and built to weather Atlantic storms. It's been sailing for 11 years under various names and owners, proving her seaworthiness time and again. This wasn't some rickety death trap. She was a proper merchant vessel designed for exactly this type of cargo run. Their cargo was 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol bound for Italy, where it would be used in fortifying wine. The manifest was clean, the paperwork in order, and the voyage fully insured through legitimate channels. Captain Morehouse of the Dei Gratia had actually been offered the same cargo contract, but turned it down for scheduling reasons. For the first several weeks, everything proceeded exactly as planned. The Mary Celeste made good time across the Atlantic, and there's no evidence of any problems whatsoever. Captain Briggs was an experienced navigator who kept meticulous records, and his logbook, up until the final entry, showed a completely normal voyage. The last entry in the ship's log was dated November 25th, placing the Mary Celeste near the Azores. Briggs noted their position, the weather conditions, and routine observations about their speed and heading. It was the kind of mundane entry you'd expect from a competent captain managing a routine voyage. Okay, but here's the crucial detail. When the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste on December 4th, she was still hundreds of miles from where that final log entry placed her. What happened during those missing 10 days? Where had the Mary Celeste been drifting? And, more importantly, when exactly did her crew disappear? The Mary Celeste had essentially become a maritime Flying Dutchman, sailing the Atlantic without a living soul aboard, carrying her deadly secret through day and night, storm and calm, until fate brought her within sight of the Dei Gratia. Now comes the detective work. When investigators examined the Mary Celeste, they found a ship that was essentially a floating crime scene, except there was no evidence of any crime. Let's start with the missing lifeboat. The Mary Celeste carried a single lifeboat mounted on davits between the main and mizzen masts. When the Dei Gratia crew boarded her, the lifeboat was gone. But here's the crucial detail. The davits was still in place and functional. This wasn't a case of the boat being torn away by storm damage. Someone had deliberately lowered that boat into the water using the proper equipment. But here's what doesn't make sense. If you're abandoning ship in an emergency, you grab essential survival supplies. Yet the Mary Celeste stores were virtually untouched. Barrels of fresh water remained sealed. Food supplies were intact. Even the ship's medicine chest was undisturbed. What kind of emergency forces you to abandon ship so quickly that you can't grab food or water, but allows you time to properly lower a lifeboat? The ship's navigation instruments tell another puzzling story. The chronometer, essentially the GPS of the 19th century, was damaged, but still aboard. The sextant and compass were missing, suggesting someone took them deliberately. But why take a sextant and leave behind far more valuable cargo? Speaking of that cargo, those 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol were worth approximately $7,000 in 1872 money. It's roughly $1 million in today's currency, just sitting there untouched. 9 of the barrels had been opened, but this appeared to be normal cargo inspection rather than theft or consumption. But the physical condition of the ship raises even more questions. There was about a foot of water in the hold, concerning but not immediately life-threatening for a vessel of the Mary Celeste's size. Ships of that era routinely dealt with water intrusion, and experienced sailors wouldn't abandon ship over something so manageable. Some of the ship's rigging had been damaged, but maritime experts who examined the evidence concluded this was consistent with the vessel sailing unmanned for days rather than battle damage or storm destruction. Perhaps most mysteriously, the ship's papers were missing. In 1872, a ship's registration and cargo documents were like a passport and driver's license combined. Captains guarded these papers with their lives, because losing them could mean legal disaster at the next port. Yet someone had taken the time to gather up all the official documents before abandoning ship. The galley provided its own eerie details. Meals had been prepared, but not finished. Personal belongings were scattered, but not ransacked. Sarah Briggs' sewing basket remained undisturbed, with needlework still in progress. Little Sophia's toys were arranged neatly in the cabin she shared with her parents. But here, as perhaps the most chilling discovery, the ship as alcohol stores, the crew as drinking rations, were completely untouched. Whatever happened aboard the Mary Celeste, it wasn't the result of drunken sailors making poor decisions. The evidence painted a picture that made no logical sense. A seaworthy vessel abandoned by experienced sailors who took time to lower the lifeboat properly and gather official papers, but left behind food, water, and a fortune in cargo. It was as if they expected to return shortly, but never did. Over the past 150 years, investigators, historians, and amateur detectives have proposed dozens of theories to explain the Mary Celeste mystery. Some are plausible, others are fantastical, but none fully explain all the evidence. Let's start with the obvious suspects. Piracy was immediately ruled out. Pirates don't abandon valuable cargo and leave ships intact. Mutiny seemed possible until investigators realized the crew had no motive to rebel against a respected captain, and there were no signs of violence anywhere aboard the vessel. Insurance fraud was another early theory. Maybe Captain Briggs had conspired to make the Mary Celeste disappear for the payout. Okay, but this theory crumbled under scrutiny. The ship wasn't overinsured. Kay's had an excellent reputation, and insurance fraud typically involves sinking vessels, not abandoning them to be found by other ships. More plausible theories focus on maritime disasters that might have prompted a hasty but unnecessary evacuation. One compelling possibility involves the cargo itself. Denatured alcohol produces highly flammable vapors, and if the crew detected unusual fumes coming from the hold, they might have feared an explosion. In their panic, they could have launched the lifeboat, intending to stay nearby until the danger passed, only to be separated from their ship by currents or weather. Some experts have suggested a seaquake, an underwater earthquake that does undamaged ships, but creates terrifying sounds and sensations that could convince a crew their vessel was about to break apart. Sailors have reported seaquakes feeling like their ship was being lifted and shaken by giant hands, accompanied by rumbling sounds from below the waterline. A waterspout, essentially a tornado at sea, might explain the crew's disappearance. These phenomena can appear suddenly and move erratically, potentially forcing a crew to abandon ship only to destroy their lifeboat while leaving the larger vessel relatively unharmed. Weather records from 1872 show the Atlantic experienced unusual conditions that autumn, with several severe storms that could have created freak conditions the crew had never encountered before. But here's where the theories get truly strange. The Mary Celeste case has attracted every variety of paranormal explanation imaginable. Sea monsters dragging the crew overboard, alien abduction, time warps, supernatural forces, even suggestions that the ship sailed through some kind of dimensional portal. While these theories make for entertaining fiction, they ignore the practical evidence. The missing lifeboat, the taken navigation instruments, and the gathered ship's papers all point to human decisions made under pressure, not supernatural intervention. One of the most recent theories involves toxic ergot poisoning from contaminated food supplies. Ergot, a fungus that grows on grain, can cause hallucinations and erratic behavior. Could the entire crew have been poisoned and made irrational decisions as a result? It's possible, but this doesn't explain why they had time to properly launch the lifeboat and gather official documents. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that we're missing a crucial piece of evidence that would make everything clear. Maybe there was an 11th person aboard, a passenger not listed in official records. Maybe the crew discovered something in the cargo hold that terrified them beyond rational thought. Maybe they encountered another vessel whose crew convinced them to abandon ship for reasons we'll never understand. The truth is, after a century and a half of investigation, Mary Celeste continues to guard her secrets as jealously as she did on that December day when the Dei Gratia found her sailing alone. The Mary Celeste case went to Admiralty Court in Gibraltar, where Captain Morehouse and his crew were awarded salvage rights, though far less than the ship and cargo were worth, partly due to suspicions about the convenient timing of their discovery. But the legal proceedings revealed no new clues about the disappearance itself. The ship sailed for another 12 years under various owners, before finally being deliberately wrecked off Haiti in 1885 in what appeared to be an insurance fraud scheme. Even in death, the Mary Celeste was surrounded by mystery and suspicious circumstances, but her legacy lived on. The story captured the Victorian imagination and has never let go. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a fictionalized account that introduced many details that were unactually true but became part of popular mythology. Countless books, movies, documentaries, and TV shows have tackled the mystery, each offering new theories, but none providing definitive answers. Why does this story continue to fascinate us? Perhaps it's because the Mary Celeste represents something fundamental about human nature. Our fear of the unknown and our need to solve puzzles, even when the pieces don't fit together properly. In our age of GPS tracking, satellite communication, and instant global connectivity, it's hard to imagine people simply vanishing without a trace. But in 1872, the ocean was still a vast, mysterious place where ships could disappear for weeks or months with no way to communicate their fate to the outside world. The Mary Celeste reminds us that even in our connected world, mysteries still exist. Despite all our technology and investigative techniques, some questions remain unanswered. Some stories end without resolution. Some people walk into the fog of history and never return. What happened to Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, little Sophia, and the 7 crew members of the Mary Celeste? Did they perish in a lifeboat somewhere in the Atlantic? Were they picked up by another vessel and taken to a remote destination? Did they encounter something so terrifying that they chose the uncertainty of the open ocean over remaining aboard their ship? We may never know. And perhaps that's fitting for a mystery that has captured imaginations for over 150 years. Some stories are more powerful when they remain unsolved, leaving us to wonder what we might have done in their situation. What fear could drive experienced sailors to abandon a seaworthy vessel? And what secrets the ocean keeps in its deepest, darkest places? The next time you look out at the sea, remember the Mary Celeste. Somewhere out there, in the vast blue beyond the horizon, mysteries are still waiting to be discovered, or to remain forever unknown. What do you think happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? Drop your theories in the comments below. Hit that like button if this mystery has captured your imagination like it has mine, and subscribe for more tales from the edge of the unknown. Till next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and remember, sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones without endings.